Right, so today I want to make a video updating everyone on the new case totals as usual, and get into some other stuff. So getting right into it, Canada is up to 63,949 confirmed cases with 4,282 dead. Alberta is up to 6,017 confirmed cases, 114 dead, 3,809 recovered cases with 174,327 recovered or completed tests. So the thing that I've been pointing out recently is the ratio of recovered to confirmed continues to go up because we had 54 new cases. We're having over 100 people a day, it seems, recover, which means that they're no longer active, which means, technically they can go out in public and not have any issues. Um, at least that's what I believe. Again, I'm not an expert, but if you're recovered, I assume that would mean that you cannot no longer spread it. But anyway, the thing to point out here is that the ratio of recovered to confirmed is up over 60% now, and it was only what, a few days ago where it was at 50. So the thing I've been pointing out for a while now is that, again, what is it going to take to get fully reopened? Because the problem is that although some businesses can reopen, I've heard a lot of places where people don't want to go back to work because number one, they're being paid not to work, or the other reason is that they're in fear that they're going to die. Now, I think both of them are not good reasons not to go back to work. Again, most people like to pretend that everybody wants to go back to work, that because the government's paying them not to work, that doesn't matter, which isn't true. Again, if you're working a minimum wage job, you're getting paid more not to work than to work, even upwards of 20 bucks an hour when you account all the costs you're not adding. So there's a decent percent of the population that is getting paid more not to work than to work. So of course people are not going to want to work. Again, that is not controversial. And when Andrew Scheer suggested that, he's right. Now, the debate of this isn't whether or not people do it. Of course, like 100% of people, if the government offered you enough money not to work, you wouldn't work. Okay, so the question that it is okay, what's the number and what's the percentage of people? So again, that's where the debate for that debate actually lies. So criticizing Andrew Scheer for that, and again, I didn't vote for the guy, so I'm not really a big fan of him. I wouldn't vote for him again, even though I absolutely disdain Justin Trudeau, still wouldn't vote for him again. So it's not a bias thing. The other, like I say, the other thing to point out too is that I know someone who operates, well, know someone through someone else, who operates a decent sized business, got about, I don't know, 20, 30 employees, so nothing major, but big enough that it's relevant and that they were in one of the industries to where they can reopen next week, I believe, but they're not going to because most of their employees are afraid of going back. So this is the problem. This is another reason why there's no reason we shouldn't be able to reopen. I've been saying this for a while too, is that when things reopen, a very good percent of the population is still going to be afraid to go out, which just makes the most obvious solution you can possibly imagine is that open things back up, keep the population that's at risk of dying quarantined, and give people the option to sit and cower in fear in their homes if they want. Again, I have no problem if you think that this is still the doomsday virus, go ahead. Just stop forcing other people to stay at home. And a lot of people aren't even following the rules and stuff anyway. Like, I'm young enough to have Snapchat, and I see all the time. I see all the time friends posting on there where they're with people. I know all of them they don't live with. Now they're not in massive groups, but again, I know there's 4 or 5 people getting together and none of them live together. I see that all the time. And I didn't see that a month ago though. I didn't see that 6 weeks ago. And it's at the point to where I think pretty most people know that yeah, this is complete BS. We shouldn't be worried about it. But again, it's one of those things that the rules in society or even like in school when you were younger that everybody knew were BS, but you pretended to follow it and all that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of what's going on here. Like I say, so anyway, we should be reopening, and like I say, it's the simplest solution in the history of simple solutions that you give people the option to stay home, and you let everyone who wants to go out because The main reason for putting this in place in the first place was so that the hospitals wouldn't be overwhelmed. We know that the hospitals will not be overwhelmed. Again, they weren't even close, like not even close. So the virus is literally going to have to be much, much worse than the first wave. And again, that's the argument too they're shifting to, that the 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 argument for keeping things closed is completely collapsed. So the best thing they can come up with now is that, oh, if we don't keep things closed, there's going to be this terrible second wave, which they don't really have evidence for. There'll be a second wave no matter what. The debate is how bad it is. But the problem with the second wave is that the less people that have antibodies, the worse it's going to be. So again, there's arguments from both sides. I still believe that opening is going to be the best, and just giving people the option, give people freedom, they'll figure it out. Um, Anyway, so this is from Stefan Molyneux. He goes on to say, so American government employees currently get time off, full pay, full benefits, job security, and a $1,200 stimulus check. They're the new aristocracy. Now, um, Canada, I don't believe, I'm not sure what Canadian government employees get, but I guarantee you they're still getting full pay. In fact, I do know someone who works for the government, and I'm 99% sure they're still getting full pay because I know they're still at work, or working from home technically. But again, so this is the problem, is that people who aren't specifically at risk for their policy decisions can't possibly make policy decisions in good faith, because if you're not subject to the downside of your poor decisions, then how can you possibly make a honest, conscious decision? And this is the problem, that you have these government employees. I mean, the Canadian government just, I mean, they just gave themselves a raise. The MPs, again, why do they get a raise when they're doing a terrible job of it? Again, the Liberals have completely botched this whole situation. I think the Conservatives, I mean, they're doing a half decent job, but again, they still should be doing a better job of criticizing the way that the government has handled this. Um, but anyway, like, why do they get this kind of stuff? And again, the American economy affects the Canadian economy a lot too. So, the way the states goes oftentimes is the way the states goes, and the Canadian economy doesn't have much an effect on the states. So, and again, this is something to point out too. Not to mention too, we are heavily influenced by the states media as well too. Like, I mean, look at people's opinions of Trump. Again, it's just, most Canadians are Trump derangement syndrome, to the nth degree. Again, they have no idea what they're talking about. Again, I don't think Trump is the greatest guy in the history of the world, but he's clearly better than what we have. He's clearly better than the past at least 4 or 5 presidents, probably more. Um, and yet we still have people that are completely, unduly influenced. So it's something I just thought I would point out. This is from CTV. Now, this is something that came out a while ago, but because things have been so busy, I haven't got around to talk. I mean, I did mention it, but I wanted to dive into it a little more. So Justin Trudeau gave $850 million to the UN, to I don't know, to the global fight against COVID-19. Now, I don't know why the article isn't loading here, but anyway, I'll just talk about it. Um, Again, this is a what are you doing kind of move by Justin Trudeau. We have millions of people unemployed. We have, the latest report showed 7.5 million people took a CERB payment, which means that the real number is probably a little bit higher than that, and that doesn't include the people that are still working, and and not getting the same amount of business as they're currently getting. That's probably not including the people that are still working that may lose their jobs because of this, and that's not including the people that just didn't even bother applying to CERB. Plus, I'm not sure if that includes people who are on unemployment insurance who weren't eligible for CERB. And I know people like that too, that aren't getting CERB, but they're getting the unemployment insurance, which isn't as much, but I guess it's still something. Um, so that's something to point out, is that we have so many people suffering, that why are we helping out other countries who haven't, what do we get out of them? And that's the thing too, is that I understand, if here's the thing, when it comes to this foreign aid stuff, if we have a balanced budget, if we have very low unemployment, very low homelessness, very low, every all the bad stuff that goes on in society, I would be reluctantly okay with some foreign aid. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't criticize a prime minister if they did it. But we are the furthest thing from that. We're gonna walk out of this with at least 20, probably 20-25% unemployment. As crazy as that sounds, the official numbers show 13, but it's always much higher than the official numbers, because the official numbers, they don't count people who aren't working, who aren't looking for work. Uh, the unemployment numbers only count people who are looking for work within the last month. The other problem with the unemployment number right now is that a lot of people had a job prior to the whole lockdown that aren't going to have a job to go back to. And there's some people that are going to have a job to go back to, but because the economy is so bad, they're going to get laid off. So the real number is probably going to be double that. So again, we're going to have 20-25% unemployment, yet we're giving away $800 million to other countries. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Um, but anyway, this is from Maxime Bernier. He goes on to say Quebec COVID mortality rate per million 268, Sweden 265, and the source is Quebec's Health Department and Johns Hopkins University. So Sweden is a country. Again, I've heard conflicting reports, or people saying that the degree of their lockdown, but they didn't lock down, I guess is the good way of putting it. But I've heard different reports of how much social distancing they're encouraging, I guess is the better way of putting it. How much of a lockdown they had on nursing homes, that kind of stuff. Like as some people, they didn't even lock down nursing home whatsoever. They didn't have social distancing whatsoever. Some people say, yeah, they did lock down nursing homes. Yeah, they did have social distancing. So I don't know who to believe, but I know they didn't completely shut down the economy. And their death rate, or their mortality rate compared to Quebec's, which is, I believe, one of the worst, if not the worst, in Canada. But on the other hand, you wouldn't completely destroy your economy. And this is the problem: is that for all the people that want to keep things shut down again, show me your cost benefit analysis and why it makes sense. The problem is their cost benefit analysis. Oh, people will die. And that's that. Oh, you want people to die if you want people to reopen. They never come up with a realistic estimate of, okay, if we keep things closed down, how many people are going to lose their jobs? How many people are going to commit suicide because they lose their jobs? How many people are going to not get diagnosed with or misdiagnosed with cancer and die because of that? How many people are going to, uh, you know, uh, abuse their kids, abuse their spouse? Again, I've heard, a lot of people saying, a lot of police officers posting on social media, and again, that's not obviously a incredibly credible source, but I mean, it's anecdotal, I guess is a better way of putting it. But I mean, I don't really know what reason they'd have to lie about it. Uh, they're getting paid regardless. But the point being is that they're saying, yeah, domestic abuse cases are way up, suicide attempts and are way up, child abuse is way up. So again, that's what I want to know from the we need to keep it locked down or we're all gonna die Karens of the world. Is okay. How much worse is the job losses? Is the economy gonna have to tank uh, before you change your mind? Like, how much is it gonna have to change? Now, on the other hand, someone could say, "Oh, how bad would it have to get for you to change your mind and to support the lockdown?" Well, for starters, the death rate would have to be, comparable to what they said before. When this first came out, they said the death rate's going to be 3 to 7% was the estimate I heard, and the real death rate is, we're talking 0.2, 0.5%. The death rate for healthy people under the age of 60 is comparable to the flu. There's almost no discernible difference between it and the flu. So again, the difference would have to be astronomical. We're talking at least 10 times the flu. So we're looking at least uh, 1-2% for healthy people. That would be enough for me to say, yeah, we should lock things down. But it's not even close to that. It's not even close to that. So anyway, last thing here. Again, I mentioned suicides. Now, suicide has killed over 300 people in India from the lockdowns. Now, again, this is India. It's a big country. But I wanted to point this out because this is, again, this is something that we need to keep it locked down or we're all going to die crowd, the Karens of the world, that they seem to refuse to acknowledge. That how bad is stuff like this going to have to get? How bad is the unemployment going to have to get? How bad is the depression going to have to get before you admit you were wrong? And that's the problem with this kind of stuff, is that people just don't want to admit they're wrong. Like, they refuse to admit they're wrong. And that's what's getting people killed. And we could mitigate the deaths of reopening by simply keeping nursing homes locked down and giving people the option of staying home. That would probably mitigate 90 to 95% of the deaths if we reopen it. In other words, we would maybe have, in Alberta, we'd have like an extra 3 or 4 people die a month. Like, are you honestly willing to say that 3 or 4 people's lives are more important than the jobs and the livelihoods of 1 million or 2 million people? Like, no, it's not even close. Now, again, not that I hate those 3 or 4 people, but I just say that, hey, the livelihoods of the 1 million or 2 million people that are out of work right now is more important than the 3 or 4 people. So, uh, anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I appreciate any donations, but if you at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, as always, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already. Again, just got Twitter like a week ago, so check me out there. And check out my BitChute channel as well if you haven't already there too.